Welcome to Lawyers Who Learn, where we explore how attorneys' engagement and lifelong learning fuels their growth. Join us to uncover these journeys and gain insights for your legal career.
Gwen, thank you for joining Lawyers Who Learn.
Thank you for having me.
This is a labor of love. Me and you have had many conversations. You're a faculty member at Lawline. You have an amazing course with Whitney Harper.
Yes.
I think it's called Breaking the Billable Hour.
Breaking up might be breaking up with the billable hour.
It makes more sense, breaking up the billable
Yes.
hour. But when we talk about the thought process of what do lawyers need to learn right now, there's nobody more than I want to talk to when thinking about how small to mid-sized firms and sole practitioners can prepare for what is happening in the future or in the present for law and what you guys are doing. So let's first start with, generally I don't always go to bios, but you're doing so many interesting things. Just tell us a little bit about your firm. And when we start doing the interview, I always like to think of like one person, one attorney who's looking to either stop doing the billable hour or start figuring out how to to think more like a business person. And so that will be sort of in my mind as I ask you questions.
Okay. All right. Do you want me to start with, 2015, we started a law firm, right? And the background, both Whitney and I were big law, general counsel, and then in a business role. And, anyone who's in a business role looking back at the profession thinks there's a huge opportunity to do this better. And by better, I mean like better experience for the people involved, owners of the law firm, team, clients, like literally everyone involved. Like if that were our metric, what would we build? We would not bill by the hour, right? That's not what clients want. It's not what attorneys enjoy doing. So that was our big mission, was building a firm that really served us well, served our clients well, served our team well. And one of that, the kind of pillars we had to break down was finding a way to price that made sense and was aligned really well with what clients want, which is like project management. They want to know what you're working on. They want to see what gets delivered. They appreciate efficiency. They do it in their own business. So why wouldn't they expect something different from their lawyer?
And just to set the stage, 2015, did you have a sizable law firm at the time, or you were starting fresh?
No, it was January 1st of 2015. I had been in an operational role of a company. And so I took that client with me when I, started the law firm. But I had one client in January of 2015. And
from that day, you never billed by the hour, or did you start? Okay. So that day you were ahead of your time, right? I guess, or in the time. People have been talking about the death of the billable hour for a long time, but you decided you wanted to go about that.
Yeah.
What I would love is, besides getting into like, here's the process of doing that, where it's more like, 'cause I know you're a teacher and you have a process and we're going to get into that, but like, tell me about some of the hardships that you had to learn early on when you're like, okay, I'm not going to bill. And I assume you're in the corporate space, or maybe just.
Yeah, our clients, right, for sure. Our clients tend to be growth stage, middle market, lower middle market companies that do not have an in-house counsel, but have in Florida, predominantly in Florida. We will co-counsel with people outside of Florida when we get referrals outside of Florida, but predominantly Florida.
Okay.
And the obstacles, number one was, if we don't bill by the hour, what are we going to track and measure? So like figuring out what that was going to look like. The biggest obstacle really was educating the buyer, right? Like everyone understands hours really well. Yeah. So that model they understand, and to try to explain a different model to them in the legal profession took some time.
But what did you use as a resource? Because currently, just to set the context, you also have another business right now that actually trains attorneys and law firms to move away from the billable hour. And then you also now have a coaching company, which we'll get into too. So, which I love, because you're sharing your knowledge because of your passion, really. But
right.
But back then, who trained you? What was there a book that you looked at? Was there a video?
Yeah, the book that started it for us was Scrum had to do twice as much work in half the time.
Nothing about law.
Nothing about law. Completely technology, right? So it was, well, I knew, we did all the research to see if there was anything in the law, and there really wasn't, right? So what you found in law was alternative fees, but they still in the back end were trying to figure out whether they made money using billable hours as the model. And my observation is and I started in big law, there's so many micro decisions that are made, right? Like all of the comp, right, is based on hours. The senior partners lived through the world of I'm going to bill hours, right?
Yeah.
So they don't want to change the model. It works for them. And you're about to say something.
Well, I was going to say, the common joke is, how do you tell a room of millionaires that they're doing something wrong, especially in big law, at least, right?
For sure. And it's
2,400
worked.
hours a year. You figure out a budget based on that.
Right.
So,
And but staffing and there's a person whose job it is to print pre-bills and
Yeah.
there's so many decisions that you can't start there.
And I'm going to just take big law and just put them in a different room, because maybe that's the case. There's a case for that, and maybe they'll go there. But I really see a case for what you built. As a really, actually, I think from the conversations I've had, you have one of the more sizable practices only from value-based pricing. So let's go back to this. Okay, you're reading this book about Scrum.
Yes.
How did you translate that into doing this?
Yeah, and the corollary is big software development projects, right? So they are complex. There are lots of inputs. There are lots of owners of different aspects of it, and you don't know the outcome, right? So an Agile says, we know what ultimately we want to accomplish, and then in little sprints, we're going to do a little bit of work, and then we're going to pick up our head and see where we are and communicate out to the stakeholders, and then adjust, right? Because we actually learned something in that sprint that will inform how do we get closer to the ultimate outcome. And so if you say that you can take a legal project and break it up the same way, right? What we're doing is keeping our client informed of where we are in the project. How many more steps do we think there are going to be? What are the variables? Giving them the opportunity to make decisions.
Just even hearing you talk right now, I'm zoning out, because and I think most attorneys will, because obviously there are similarities between being a developer and a lawyer, because there's a lot of problem solving and going through it, but obviously you have a knack for project management and building that up. But and the fact that you even knew about that book in the first place, so you finished the book, how do you then, what's the first thing, the first idea that you came up with on how, okay, we're going to charge X for this?
Well, two things I'll say. One is project management, 100%, right? Your point of in the role of general counsel, in the role of a business person, right? Done is not how many hours did I spend on something, right? It is, did I manage the project to get the outcome we wanted?
So on that topic of project management, any resources that you would recommend? I know besides Scrum, maybe a little bit
easier to manage. Yeah.
Is there a resource that you use in?
So we use a software called Rike, W-R-I-K-E. I think Asana. I think there's lots of project management software out there. What we found.
There's one thing to use software. There's another thing to understand. I mean, do you need to understand what project management is, or can you just use Asana and be okay, let me just do
yeah. I think if you're a good lawyer, you probably are doing project management. You just haven't called yourself a project manager, right? If you're getting good outcomes for your client, there's a process and you have to dissect your workflow to figure out what those steps are, but you are doing it.
And where did you start then? What was the first?
You know what? I think it was just on the job, right?
No, what was the first thing you did? What was the first thing you priced out? How did you?
A multi-member operating agreement, right? Was probably the first thing we pulled up. And honestly, just if you practice law a long time, you have a gut instinct of what this should cost, right? And so we picked a number based on what we thought it should cost. And then we started to break out all the pieces, right? All the steps along the way. And then create repeatable processes and workflows. And I bet I'm making you zone out again.
No, well, no, like, and maybe, but what everyone does, right, especially in the beginning, is like, okay, well, that would take me 3 hours to do, and I charge $500 an hour. Okay, $1,500 for that partner agreement.
Multi-member operating agreement. Yeah,
So I assume you didn't do that, because they
we
say,
didn't.
oh, that's not really value-based pricing. So
Correct.
So
Well, I mean, to some degree, there is an element of hours in it, right? There's not what it was looking back over the times I had done that in my career and knowing that it's not just drafting it, right? It's educating the client. The client needs to make decisions. You've got to come back and refine it. And then how can we make that process more efficient? So I'm not going to start by drafting a 70-page document. I'm going to start by, here's a term sheet. Here are the key terms. Let's have a conversation about them. Let's get them right.
Yeah.
Before we draft. So
Right.
what is that least, back to the agile, what is the smallest component that we can do that gets us some decisions that we can make that help us make the rest more efficient?
Okay. And were you with Whitney at that time?
Whitney joined like 5 months into, so
Okay.
June of
Okay.
2015.
This is 2015. How long did it take for things to really accelerate beyond, give me the first 12 to 24 months of what an attorney who's trying to learn how to do this,
Right.
what they can expect. And obviously it's different now because there's more resources, including you, but take me through those first years.
Well, and it's funny, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit to what we also realize is, yes, we want to break up with the billable hour. And there's a lot of just business processes, really great business processes that every business should know. And so breaking it down, I would say year one was, I'm a big believer in the one thing, right? You have one thing.
The book, the one thing.
The book, the one thing. But our one thing was revenue, right? Like,
and just to those who don't know the book, it's a book about a guy who's, I think, a design agency. They were doing all these different.
It was real estate. Yeah.
Oh, I thought the one
Gary
thing.
Keller. I'm
thinking of a book where the guy ended up just designing logos, but that's a different book. So the one thing to tell us, so to give us the.
Yeah. So the concept in the one thing is the idea that you can only have one priority, right? You can have lots of goals and lots of initiatives, but you can only have one priority. And if you are being distracted by all the different things, none of them get served particularly well. So what is the one thing you can do by doing it makes everything else easier or obsolete?
I laugh because I just came up with this phrase where I'm like a backwards procrastinator, where instead of, or maybe that's the wrong term, but instead of, like, when I have one important thing I'm trying to do, like I'm trying to finish a book right now, what I do, instead of just doing that one thing, I add 6 more things, including starting a podcast and becoming a speaker and then becoming a trainer. I add all these things to procrastinate from the one thing that I need to get done. So is that book though, like, okay, the one thing finished, if finishing that book will move everything else forward, because that will give you the content, that will give you that's what you need to put your focus on.
Right.
Is that
right?
What was your one thing?
So our one thing was revenue. And I would say for 2 or 3 years, it was meet people, tell them what you do, right? Get out into the marketplace.
So one thing was increasing revenue, but I get confused because obviously that's everybody's one thing. So how does that differ? Like
Yeah, I don't know that it's what you asked the question in 2015, what did you do? Right. And take away the business model that we used.
Yeah.
Our one thing was none of it matters if you don't have revenue.
Correct. Right.
Right. So we were building in the back end. How do we get more efficient? Right. We were building on we were creating playbooks, right? We were doing analysis, but if your question of like, if I'm talking to another law firm, I'm going to say your first year or two, you want to be able to drive revenue.
And do they want to come up with like 15 different packages? Like, okay, there's 15 main things that they do, 5 main things that they do. Let me figure out what that pricing is. And do you flat base pricing, or do you do a subscription model pricing? And like, there's just, that's what it's overwhelming. If as an attorney, like I'm thinking, okay, how do I go about this? I don't even know where to start. Let me just I barely have time to practice. How can I focus on rebuilding for what we are thinking is probably the law firm of the future.
Right. Well, so different question. Like if you're an existing firm out there and you want to move in this direction, then one, you need to know who your ideal client is, right? Like you need to package your work in a way that's going to be appealing to them, package your messaging in a way that's going to be appealing to them. And then look at all the work you do and what are the pieces that you're doing repeatably, right? Like in my case, corporate lawyer, a multi-member operating agreement, we do regularly. So I can take that one component, price it, and then I create the playbooks and the ways to make that more efficient and train our team and create the training so that I'm not starting from zero every single time. I'm investing in doing it better. Your other question was membership, like we call them members, but it's subscription. So our client, we've said our ideal client is a growth stage company. What do they need? They would really value having someone they can talk to regularly, right? And proactively and before something becomes problematic. And so then we design the membership for them, right? Instead of saying, I do this, so I'm going to come at from
it's a
what I
custom
do.
membership.
Correct. But it has the flexibility. Like I know who my ideal client is. We know who our ideal client is. So we can, like if you were a family law attorney, you could get really clear, what does my family law practice look like? Then what does that membership package look like for them? But it's not what you described of like 24 different, I'm not going to like, there's not an a la carte and you like put things in your cart, right?
It's more custom in general.
It's flexible, right?
Flexible.
Like, right. It is one product that can do what you need.
Okay.
I'm not creating new proposals or new things every time or becoming a commodity.
Take me through 2017 to 2024. Many times, like you said, even now, it's hard to find firms that fully focus on this. And I don't know if you can share at all some idea of your scale, just to give a sense that you're not just, have one or two clients that you've really been able to scale to give some inspiration. But what have you had to constantly relearn over these years?
Well, a couple questions. One, I'll say, I think we found stable in about 2020, 2021. So we tried to grow and add people to the team. And we decided that we don't actually, it takes us away from the work we really love to do. So we didn't, and some people may choose differently, but there's two of us. We have about 30 clients. Average membership is 5,000 a month member. And then we do some transaction work. So we do sell side transactions, and that we do that on a project basis also. So it's still not hours. And those will have some bigger, at closing, we get paid a bigger amount than just the membership. You had a lot of questions in there, so I'm not sure I covered them all.
Yeah, it's okay. So well, what have you had to relearn during, because, to me, that's scaling, even Lawline, every stage we had to, the 1 million mark, the 5 million mark, the 10 million mark, there's always a reinvention. And did you have to reinvent yourselves during this time?
Right. Well, I think the experiment of like trying to go to another city, trying to add people, right? And then looking at a different way of scaling. We now, and I'm getting again into our other business, but we've created a community. So we now are co-counseling with lawyers, and that is the way we're doing more work, right? They're not employees of ours, but it gives us the opportunity to say yes to the client and have someone who is really capable to help. Honestly, on the law firm side, it's pretty smooth, right? Like we got more and more efficient with communicating. So we're not sending out custom proposals. We have a 1-page membership document. You sign up, you say yes, you become a member. We start to work.
So you said there's 2 of you. Have you reached the limit with 30 clients, what the 2 of you can handle at this stage? And yeah, just want to get a sense of that.
Yeah, I think because we feel very passionate that there is a better way and we're trying to get that better way out. So all of our discretionary effort is really focused on building Advos Pro.
So that's a good segue. So
But to answer the question, like I think
yeah.
if we cared to grow Advos Legal, we could. Like I don't think we've capped out on our capacity. It's just that we're using that extra capacity for Advos Pro.
So what is Advos Pro?
Yes. So we have built a community, online community of other lawyers who want to think differently. The community itself is free. Like that's just a place where people can say, amazing Lawline CLE, right? Or like, give feedback and share ideas. And you and I talked about a couple of the people that are in the community. And so they're
Share them.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to share. Like
Yeah. Well, Matt Kurbis, right? The subscription lawyer.
I interviewed him. That'll be coming out.
Yeah. And I was, yeah. And Lawline, right? He's a Lawline speaker as well, part of the faculty.
Yeah.
But
tell me, because like, tell me about this community. So originally the course that you taught Lawline, you mentioned something called the P3 method.
Yes.
What is that, and how does that, is that something that relates to what you're trying to teach?
Sure.
The community?
Yeah. So inside the community, there are parts that you can pay for, right? And the P3 course is still one of the courses, kind of foundational course, which is how are you pricing? So kind of getting back to your question of how are you pricing the offer that you have? How are you pitching it? Because I mentioned the hardest thing was educating the community. So that pitch part is important. And then how are you becoming more profitable? And profitability, right, which is the big driver, is performance management, your team. How are they getting better and faster? And then your systems, your processes. How are you improving your processes so that you get better and more efficient? You're charging the same thing for that piece, but now it's not as labor intensive. Software helps, AI helps, so you become more profitable doing it. So the P3 course is one of the courses in there. We do it like DIY paced or coached, which seems to be more popular.
And the original intention when you started Advos Pro was geared towards supporting law firms who want to create a value-based pricing. You would create a platform and a software for them. You create that educational component as well as a consulting component, correct? Do I have that right?
That is, and I think in one of our last conversations, I talked about the fact that we've sort of worked backwards. Like we developed the software that lets you do it and track the deliverables, tracks the components of the work you're doing, not hours. But what we found when we went out to market and started talking to other law firm owners, that there were some more basic components that would make them have a more successful practice. So now we're in that kind of coaching and we call it the path to Promance. But
is there any specific examples, if possible, that like, versus just like they needed to do more project management, like where you're like talking to a law firm, you're like, oh, wow, they're not like, they need to first work on like things that like were like in the light that like, okay, they need some help. I would love to hear,
Yeah. Well, some of the things that we really touched about, like, do you have a very, very clear avatar of who your ideal client is? Because you talk with a lot of lawyers and you say, what do you do? And they say, I do patents, I do trademarks, I do what they talk about the service they provide, but that doesn't connect with their client, right? The client is like, I need someone to help me protect my intellectual property, right? So then the lawyer thinking, I'm helping people protect their IP, which is a shift in the way a lot of lawyers, I mean, you go to look at almost any website, right, of lawyers, and they're like, we do government relations and we do transactions. It's all about the service they provide. So ideal client is really one of the key pieces. And then that, to me, the one thing back to that, like if revenue is your biggest problem, do not look at what kind of software do you need, right? And try to solve processes and create workflows. Focus on getting revenue.
So I recently actually just went live today. Sean Jardin from Big Yellow Penguin, and he wrote a book called, I don't know, all the books. I don't know if it's called The Breakup of the Billable Hour because that's the course, but it's something about the billable hour changing.
Yes.
But his whole thing is he focused on change management, and he took a book from Harvard Business Review about change management and adopted it. And so how like, because a lot of what you're saying is avatar, and then you're saying the one thing, like how important are you focusing? Do you think you're the focus on change management, understanding, like you're shifting a whole new way of thinking? Is that kind of what you're getting at in these business sessions, changing the way they think about their law firm?
And accountability, right? So if you're a partner in a law firm, or you own a small law firm, you don't necessarily, you and I've had this conversation too, like YPO.
Don't tell anyone.
Like that CEO roundtable concept of you have someone else who, who's holding you accountable. So when you say this quarter, this is the thing I'm going to work on, you're going to face that group again. And you either did what you said you were going to do, or you didn't. And most time people want to do, that gives them more accountability. Right.
Got it. So right now you've launched a CEO roundtable. When did you launch it? What is it? I'm excited what you're talking about. I'm a lawyer listening. How do I get involved in that? Just take me through that a little bit, because this is not really being done, from I understand, in so many different places. I know a couple of different areas. I know Chris does it to a much higher end for mostly personal injury firms.
Yep.
It's like 6 figures it costs them, but they do an amazing job. But I haven't heard it like so much more in this level. So I'm super interested in understanding it.
Yeah.
For anyone listening.
Yeah, we launched in January, and getting into the particulars, we do 90-minute sessions virtually. So we have people from Canada, like literally all over the country, 90-minute sessions once a month. Then we do a workshop based on the issues that we're hearing, and we do strategic planning. So once a quarter, we're doing a strategic planning session, kind of half day virtually, with that small group.
And is there just one group right now?
There is right now just one group.
And then to build out many groups?
So we have that offering, but right now I know we sound like but to me, it's a little bit like test the market, see what sticks, right? Like what is it that's going to be valuable? What we've learned in the last couple of years doing kind of one-on-one coaching, doing this CEO roundtable, are the issues that a law firm needs to think about. And core to it is business model, right? The way the hourly piece fits in is, does your business model actually serve you? But there's a, are you attracting the right revenue? Do you have the right business model? Do you have a clear vision of where you're going? So we have this new offer that is coached program it's called Path to Promance, where we've got the videos and the worksheets and the modules, and you sort of go through, and you still get the strategic planning and the workshop with it.
Just as a side note, how much time can you actually dedicate to this second business? Is it 50-50, 30? Is it?
No, it's probably 20% of my time is on Advos Pro right now. We do have a full-time person working in that business.
Yeah.
And then Whitney and I are both, and I've mentioned this to you once before, but what am I, like, I'm passionate about it, right? So this is like the candy, right, that I get to do.
Well, as am I, right? And that's what I love about lawyers who learn. That's what I love about talking to faculty and other areas. So like where I'm thinking about Lawline for 2025 is there's a couple areas. Like, one, how do we better prepare attorneys for the future of law? Like, actually, that's what I'm thinking about as our mission, right? Like, that is our mission, right? Yep. But how do we articulate that more? And it's interesting because for Lawline, we think we are unique, and I think it sounds like you are too, is like, we partner with attorneys and where they're at today. And in 2020, a lot of attorneys, you were ahead of your time. Attorneys were not thinking about the future of the practice of law. Because obviously COVID was happening, but like it was always been the thing that lawyers are always behind. With AI being at the table, what I'm seeing, at least in the industry, lawyers are no longer behind. They're actually ahead of many other industries. And so I think one big result of that is more attorneys will have the opportunity to think about how to move to value-based pricing. And like you said, and you've learned from doing this, you can't just like, there is change management. You can't just jump to it and like, okay, how do we help you set up a better business? And then we can start moving to that process. So my question in this whole lineup is like, where do you think Lawline can have an impact? Oh, and so the other area is like, we want to focus more on our community. I don't know if it's in person. I don't know if it's virtual. I don't know if it's helping you with roundtables, building our own roundtables. We have almost 50,000 subscribers taking courses every year. We have more than that, just taking courses in general. We have more of a reach. And I just feel like we're underutilizing our, let me just say, I'm always like a perfectionist and I want to do better. I feel like we're doing a great job in many areas, but I feel like there's so much more we can be doing to support, and community is one of them.
Yeah.
Give me some advice, or what are some?
Well, I obviously agree completely that community is a huge part of it, right? That's why we started to build out the little community that we have. And honestly, like doing that part of the business, we're learning so much about how to build a digital business, right? That isn't what our law firm did, right? How to get the word out, how to get the right clients in. And I think in the world of social media today, that private community, right, where people can feel like what they're saying isn't for the whole world's consumption, right? Having those closed communities is incredibly valuable. And you just described, like, you've got so many people, if you can figure out the connections and create those smaller groups and those smaller opportunities. And then, my passion about peer mentoring, right? Like adult learning. How do adults actually learn? They learn from each other, right? They learn from someone who's done it before, and they're not going to like the CLE. And I think Lawline does a phenomenal job, and sitting and listening to someone talk at you is not the best way for people to learn, right? And they're not going to put it in practice and then be held accountable to put it in practice. Like, did you actually change your behavior because you watched a CLE?
Right. There's formal and informal learning. And formal learning, yes, you're taught a course, right? On-demand course, in-person course. And then the more informal and there's also learning by doing.
Right.
And like, I am ready, willing, and able. And we've built tools into our system to help enhance the just-in-time learning. We built an AI tool where you can actually ask it questions, just like ChatGPT, but essentially using OpenAI software to really get into, if you're watching your course and you have questions, you can get really down to it. And we also built slides and transcripts and things like that. But yeah, there is this coaching community component that is harder to scale, right? And I don't remember, we might have talked about Rachel Clark.
Yes. Yeah.
So she was one of the first interviews that went live, and she's, in the process of building peer groups for women attorneys, which again, it's not easy to do, to get that out there, but it's the same type of thing to go out there. So obviously you're just getting started, but what would you recommend what would be the first few steps that you would say, okay, well, and if you don't have this is putting you on this, sometimes when you put on the spot, you can give a good answer, right? But what would give a first? We're actually having our executive strategy summit on Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. I want to use this,
Sure.
And have everybody.
I would say, could you look at your data of who is engaged in they watch more CLEs, they comment more, they have is there a way for you to measure engagement with the members you have on your platform today? So question for you, is that possible?
So certainly we can measure courses completed, how many courses were taken. If there's a contact us button for the faculty that's there, and we don't really we just measure, we track that to make sure there's not spam, but that's not really a big measurement. And I would say the only really way we're really measuring is, you know, my course is completed. So, but I can tell you, the other things that we do measure, which are really powerful, is course comments, right? And these are voluntary things that users out there, and we get hundreds a day. And 95% of them are all positive or whatever, 80%, whatever. But when they're really positive, they're super positive. Like they're just like, this course transformed my practice, right? And I'm sure if we look at your course, we're going to find that.
I will say we keep the feedback that we get from your course, and I think we did about 2 years ago, and we're still like pretty regularly getting feedback, and you know, really positive.
When I called you or reached out to you?
We've had, we won't get off on the big law stuff, but big law managing partners hear what we have done, and we've had some conversations. So I think that's the long-term answer. I think, you know, small firms can make a decision by, you know, make changes by, you know, the course. The bigger firms have a bigger.
No, I love that. I love to hear it.
But yes, but I would say, like David, like I think about that shift, right? How to change when change is hard. I think two brothers wrote the book, and they talk about finding a bright spot, right? Like finding a bright spot, getting it right, and then you scale. Right, which is, I'm sure, what you experienced growing Lawline. But I would think you could look at your population and invite 50, right? To say, we see that you are one of our star, you know, proponents of Lawline, and we want to see if this roundtable concept, or, you know, whatever you decide that looks like, would be interesting to you, so that, you know, we know that peer learning is one of the best ways, and accountability, right, is one of the best ways for lawyers to, or for adults to continue to learn. And we want to put that in place. And would you be interested?
Yeah, it's interesting. The only thing holding us, I mean, lots of things holding us back, you know, because we focus on the one thing as well, is the scale of it, right? It's, you know, you don't want to overcharge, but you have to charge enough where it makes sense. Because if you charge too low and you can't really scale it, and I know that's something you're
right. We're going to have to face. It's part of why we are doing this one roundtable. It's been incredible for us to get the feedback. It is also why we have built out the path to Promance, because it is
the path to Promance. It's called.
Yes, we have a Promance score. So we start off with, do you love your work? Right? Do you love it? And you get a score, and then you watch the videos, but you're having one-on-one, like quick, like one deep dive a quarter, but then quick calls with someone to hold you accountable. And that is more scalable, right? That there can ultimately be someone other than Whitney and Gwen who are having those one-on-one calls and checking in, and are you following the program? But I think that, like, Vistage and Tech and Tab, like lots of people have.
I'm in IPO, and I've been
IPO, right? That has happened.
Yeah, no, I love it. I know you taught the one course with us, and it's as more relevant than ever. Any thoughts or ideas that you would, just from your experience of working with Lawline, that you think we should add for faculty experience?
You know what, and you asked me at the beginning of the call, and I'm like thinking about it, but honestly, I think, and I'm not just, you know, pandering, but I think it was like a great experience. We have a person who like gets back in touch with us, sends us reports. The experience of having, you know, doing the CLE, you guys rocked it. You did.
One of the things that we're thinking about is, and it's sort of kind of what we're talking about here, is faculty hours, right? Like, you know, because it's one way to scale sort of this type of thing where we know 6,000 people, let's say, I'm making the number up, I don't know off the top of my head, have completed your course. Imagine you're like, yeah, once a quarter, I'll do an hour and a half faculty hours, you know, 30 people, I'll do it on Zoom.
Sure.
Great for me because I get to see who's talking, and I'll answer any questions. Yeah, what's your thoughts on that?
I like that a lot. I'm reading the book, one of the books I'm reading right now is Slow Productivity, Cal Newport. And
I know Cal, yeah.
Yeah. And he talks a lot about, the way to avoid sort of meeting fatigue or 30 minutes on your calendar when it could have been 10, right, is office hours. And I haven't adopted that in our world yet, but I love that thought. And then the way you described it of you're setting it up so that you don't have an infinite number of calls and
yeah, the challenge is how do you assign the value to it, right? Because you can always try anything for free, right? But everything takes time and energy, right?
Right.
And we love it. We love doing things. We do so many things that we just add on for free because we're like, great, we want to add more and more value. But everything that you do takes away from something else you do. And so and also there's an accountability if you're paying for it and
right, you show up,
get a stipend for it, just something that there's everybody has that accountability. That's where things get real, right? And it's like you do it first, people show up, and maybe that's the way to start it. But that's always the struggle for any business trying to add more value or features.
Yeah, and I do think you're absolutely right that free, no one puts any value on free. And content, there's so much content out there. How are you distinguishing from all the other free webinars and, or very low cost things that, you can go to.
And then there's the flip side. Okay, there's a charge for it. There's an expectation that you have to hit, and it has to be clear focus and structure where it's free. You just sign up and we have a conversation. So
yeah. What if you said, Lawline member, you can sign up to be, I don't know the name of it, but you pay some annual fee and then you get to go to these things that are interesting to you, right? So they've paid something to be part of it over the course of a year.
Yeah.
They're not doing it just for that one. Like if something happens, it's okay. They've paid for the year, but then they sign up for the things. And then you get some sense by who signs up, who cares about the topics. And if you don't have enough people sign up, then, don't bother.
No, I love that. And I remember somebody once taught me a good strategy. He's like, you want to build something, you tell your audience, right, that it exists already, send them a sign up form. And if 100 people sign up, you create it.
Right. Right.
And that's a good way to go about it. And of course, if figuring out how do you, in those models, how do you determine how to make it worthwhile for the faculty? And because I would love to build on top of that, right? And figure out, again, not for you to figure out now, but those are all things that are important to kind of work out the scalability of something that.
Yeah, well, and I think a lot of your faculty, right, they're doing it to get their name out. There's
no 100%. No,
the dollars aren't the value.
Because even if you assign $500 or whatever it is, it's great, thanks. But totally, but I always think about scalability and whatever. So to me, I always focus on where the struggle is for any attorney or anybody who's in business. Are these things that I want, or is there a true need and pain that I'm solving in the market, and how bad? And the good news is you've already done a lot of the legwork yourself, and you see the pain. The question is how widespread is it?
Yeah.
And so that's interesting.
And are people really willing to invest dollars aside, the time, right? The time in our busy world. And if I'm in your shoes, I'm thinking about looking at your faculty, who got the best ratings, who had the most people listening, right? The number of people who watched it is a great barometer of, right, how much the market wanted to hear that, right? And then I know for us, what was really valuable was, right, being able to put it on our website, right? We were on a Lawline, right? And encourage people to go from our website and go to Lawline and listen to the CLE, right?
I think I just thought I think we should create a think tank with you, with Sean, not Sean, I'm sorry, Matt,
Purpose. Yeah.
And about just have and then are you interested in moving away from the non-billable hour? Talk to these two faculty members, an hour, see what happens and see who shows up. Let's
right.
Should we do it?
Yes,
Okay.
I will do it. I'm
Yeah.
in. Yeah.
We'll connect afterwards and see how we can get that to go. And last thing, as I said, first of all, thank you. This has been amazing. Like, we can talk obviously for hours, and look, maybe no one else is interested in it but me, but I always believe if you're providing advice, even if it's about what Lawline can do, other people they learn more from understanding. Like, when you're coaching me, like, which kind of you are giving advice, they can learn and apply that to themselves versus you just giving general information and things like that. So I hope others can do that. And so
Absolutely.
I'll end with sort of what I also mentioned to you in the beginning is there any questions that you have for me that I can give back to you and all this great advice that you've given to me?
Yes.
Or just about Lawline or about anything else that we can end on that note.
Yeah. Well, and I will say, to your point of the value of hearing a story or an experience and a problem and how you would solve it, right? That's the whole point of a peer-to-peer group, right? Like, it's not my problem today, but I'm hearing how you're solving it. And then as the facilitators of it, we were able to pull out what are those common threads that everyone's having, and then how do we bring the resources to help them?
Exactly.
Questions for you, like that could take a whole nother hour, so I won't do that. But and you've talked about a few of them, like where are you going? What are you trying to solve for? And I always like hearing short term, like it sounds like next year you have plans, but like, if you were to say 10 years from now, what does Lawline look like? What is your picture now?
So one of the things that I talk about is, what do we look like 100? Like, we just celebrated our 25-year anniversary.
Congratulations.
If you want to learn more about that, you can watch the first episode where I interviewed my dad about the birth of Lawline.
Right. I read some of the transcript of that. Loved it.
So I think about, okay, what does it look like to be here for the next 75 years? Of course, 10 years is part of that. And then, like, it's not so absurd. PLI is celebrating their 90 something anniversary this year. As long as there's lawyers, as long as there's law, as long as things are changing, there'll be a need to educate them in some form. So, like, that's what gets me energized and has gotten me energized always from day one is just-in-time learning, lifelong learning to help you support you in your practice beyond the CLE credit hour. And we've always tried to adapt our platform and technology to do that. Over the past several years, where we've really expanded in really exciting ways, one is in the large law firm space. It's our fastest growing segment, high 7 figures in terms of where we've been and who we support. And one of the new things that we recently launched based on the pain that we were seeing in the marketplace is CLE accreditation services. So
yes,
we do it for firms and we're doing it for companies. Like US Legal Support is an example of a company that they constantly are putting on CLE programs to their clients. And they're using our platform. We're giving our programs, we're hosting it for them. But then there's other larger firms where we're actually accrediting them, we're putting it together for them, and then we're hosting it on a different platform. And when we do things, we try to do it like you do it. We build systems and processes in place. So when I said, let's do this, let's not build it from scratch. Let's not build it. If we were building it from scratch today, which we were, so we built a whole online interface to make it easy and seamless to not only create the content, but to track it. So that is something. What I've always been interested in is, like, how can we host more content for you and your firm and your faculty to support your clients, and how do we do that? So, like, that's an area I want to expand. But if I were to say 10 years from now, we're beyond law, we're into law students, we're into professionals who need legal content, and we're into where I wanted to be 10 years ago. When we rechanged the name of the company to Further Ed, we went to we're a continuing education provider, but I would love to see an arm that's a different, completely separate from Lawline, which is about furthering education, which is about continuing education for business professionals and individuals and adapting to how things are changing so quickly. So, and even 5 years from now, my hope is to slowly and surely move away from the talking head. But in order to do that, we need to work with the accreditation agencies to find other ways to get programs to be accredited for, for instead of watching 60 minutes without being able to fast forward, because
Right.
you see some of the things that are happening. I don't know if you messed around with Google Notebook at all.
I haven't done that one yet.
Just Google it, right? And
Yeah.
and then it's free right now. And let's say after this, I'm gonna upload I'm gonna copy your transcript of your course to it, and I'll share it with you, because you can make a shareable link. It creates 5 different, it creates like a brief of it. It creates a timeline. It creates a summary. It creates a Q&A, and then amazingly, it creates like a 15-minute podcast with 2 people talking about your course, where it sounds like a very famous podcast. And because I actually learned the best that way, and they're just talking it out. And
Wow.
it takes 3 seconds to do all that, right? And like, we're just getting started. So like, what we're doing right now is, like you said, you look at some of the transcript of my dad's course or the podcast.
Yeah.
People don't have, like, yes, eventually you build up a following and people want to listen when they're doing different things, but it's how do you get the just-in-time learning in the way that somebody needs it in 7 different forms. So that's a long answer to your question.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Well, and it's funny because Advos Pro, the name Pro, was very intentional, because we hear from marketing people, we hear from CPAs, tax advisors, all who say, I do not want to bill by the hour. I want to project manage. I want to show my client how much value I'm delivering, right? Which is completely separate from hours. And so we're having those conversations now. From a marketing standpoint, we're marketing to lawyers, right? But we really do believe any business that has historically billed by the hour, professional service, like there is a better way to communicate to your client the value that you're delivering. So
I would love to hit a magic button and work with you and Matt and other forward-thinking attorneys to build an academy and an interaction on Lawline, because because to me, this is about efficiency. This is about scalability. This is about freedom of time. It's about a better experience for your client.
yeah.
It's
Well,
about,
I'd add like joy. You can work a little bit at it, but like we are people who went and got law degrees. Like we care about education, we care about learning, and then we end up in a business model that is measuring inefficiency, right? Like it's literally your goal is to take as long as it could take to do so.
Well, clearly we still have a lot to talk about offline.
Yes.
Which is good. Yes. If anybody wants to join us who's gotten this far, you've earned that conversation.
It's been so fun.
It's been so fun. We'll find a date to do this with you and Matt. Love to try to do something before the end of the year if we can make that happen. Let's just,
sure. Let's figure it out.
Let's send it out to everybody who's watched both your courses and see what happens. Awesome. Thank you so much for your time, Gwen.
David, this has been so fun. I love it. Like it sparks all sorts of new ideas.
That's the point. And that's why if you haven't started a podcast, you should, because it's about sparking new ideas. It's about creating more connections and having some fun.